Okay, so we've already gone through, like, you have so many options now, and this is not even a complete list of what all we can do. And Contura and Fair Smile seem to be the things that patients mostly come and ask you for when they have searched the net. In fact, everybody searches the net today. They'll either ask you for one of these or something special that they've read up, and you have to be prepared to answer all their questions. And however, selecting the right procedure, I think, depends on a lot of things. Availability of equipments in your clinic. You may not have all of them. You may have a few of them. You may have access to a few of them. And in that sense, then the surgeon preferences would obviously, like we just saw, different surgeons would have different preferences and comfort zones. Patient preferences may be different. And then the patient parameters and indications. So it's all about case selection, surgeon selection, equipment selection, and the equipment availability can be a big problem. It can be a shared facility or it can be a self-owned. You may have an excimer, microkeratome, femtosecond laser, smile, and you can phakic lenses are becoming more and more popular. So surgeon preferences can depend on these things, convictions, things that you may have a mental block for, peer influence. Even the industry influence makes a lot of difference today. And we all get confused when industry tries to promote a procedure which may not actually be something amazing. Now, country specific, if you would know that places like Japan have completely stopped doing LASIK in the last few years because there was some big problem with LASIK over there. So it's totally gone away from LASIK and they are doing mostly phakic lenses. So in India, when we had that issue about 20 years back, where suddenly there was that RPC report about Indian eyes not being suitable, suddenly the LASIK was gone. And it can be country specific where things change. Patient preferences can be different. They may have different expectations from the procedure, their occupation and their profession and their interests. And then, what they read up on Google is so difficult, because they can come back with all information which has been fed to them through Dr. Google. And so now case selection, I think, is the key. And there is no one procedure which is perfect for every patient. Every procedure has its indications and limitations. And I think choosing the right procedure for a patient based on his evaluation, his requirements, his expectations, and his budget is a surgeon's biggest responsibility. So we cannot push something, on the patient. We have to look at him, what he really needs and what is he kind of, going to get out of it. So I think that can so many times change what you thought you were going to do. And once you talk to the patient, it's very important to take a decision on what might actually best suit that person. We all know about these things, so I won't go into that. Now, range of corrections. We were just speaking about it, and my thoughts on these keep changing. As Neeraj just asked me, that I still do surface ablations up to 6 or 7 diopters. 100 microns is my cutoff. And Smile has become the predominant procedure in my clinic. Possibly again speaks about how much confidence you have with your procedure. And also, once you buy a machine, you want to use it. But more important than that, also what you see is good for the patient and what you have more conviction about. So while it's possible for big corrections up till -12, spherical equivalent, and astigmatism up to 5, I think it is best for myopia between 1.5 diopters to -10. I would sometimes not go close to 10. I might, because the lenticule thickness that you remove goes up to almost 150 when you're treating very, very high corrections. I don't like to weaken the cornea that much. Similarly, astigmatism, when I started out, I would probably, be happy doing about 1.5, 2 diopters. Today, I routinely do up to 3 diopters, only when the spherical is much bigger than the astigmatism. Pure astigmatism, we've done off late, 3 to 4, 3.5, 4, but there we are very careful about cyclotorsion control, and then we, adjust for that, because that can sometimes not give you the full result. And of course, hyperopia is still not possible. Mixed astigmatism is possible now with the new software upgrade. LASIK is possible for, it has probably the biggest range. LASIK you can do for small 0.5 corrections. You can do it for -12. You can do astigmatism nicely up till -6, and you can do hyperopia up to 6. It's a different matter that now we don't like to do hyperopia up till +6. I used to do hyperopia up till 5 or 6 about 15-20 years back. Today I would be stuck at 2.5, 3 diopters at the most. I would not want to go beyond that. So I think if we quickly look at the pros and cons. PRK, we all understand. I think there's no flap interface complications, best biomechanics in the whole thing, and it's minimally invasive. But then patient discomfort used to be there. Today, I would say that it's hardly there. So that's why my volumes have gone up. The risk of haze has been controlled very well. Requires mitomycin, but also requires good counseling to the patient about topical steroid use and UV protective glasses. And also you have to counsel them a little bit about their slow visual recovery. And Smile has been my procedure of choice off late. And I would, it definitely has advantages because it preserves the Bowman's and the anterior stroma. So good biomechanics, better than LASIK for sure. I don't know if it's better than Surface, but that remains to be proven. Again, it does away mostly with all the flap complications. I always say that on the day of surgery, the patient sleeps well, the surgeon sleeps well. When a patient gets up from the smile table right after surgery, I typically I have to think what should I tell them, what precautions. There's almost no precaution that they should be taking because with LASIK you're typically telling them don't touch your eyes, don't rub your eyes, don't turn in the bed, all these things. With Smile you hardly tell them anything. So the optical zones are good. So all these things I think we've gone through in a Smile talk. I will not talk about them. Minimal precautions. Now looking at where you should not be doing Smile. Enhancements can be a little bit of a problem, although with new Circle softwares and everything, things have become very easy. Surface enhancements are very easy to do. So we've done a lot with enhancements, and even Smile enhancements are coming up. The big thing is customized treatments are not yet possible. So if any patient needs that, and I'll come to that later, hyperopia is still not possible, although the results are showing up well. We don't have cyclotorsion control. It's very expensive. Now, coming to LASIK pros and cons, I think the biggest pro of LASIK and full range of treatments are possible, and it has an excellent track record, and you can customize in so many different ways, and easy access to surgeons. Every city has good LASIK machines. It's much cheaper. Now coming to what Neeraj wanted me to speak about, specifically about femto-LASIK and Smile contraindications, or where you would not want to do it. So I had to look back and see whether microkeratome versus femto, what all would be good. I think femto is much better than microkeratome in many ways, but amongst them is the planar flap, which allows you to have a flap which is not meniscus shaped as it would happen in microkeratome. And if you're trying to cut a very thin flap with microkeratome, and because it's meniscus, you may get a small buttonhole or Bowman's island in the center. The side cuts make the 90-degree side cuts on the femto flaps make them fit much better. There's much less risk of epithelial ingrowths, much less risk of slippage, and customizations are much more better possible with femto-LASIK, and you can customize the flaps in many ways. And then you avoid all these complications with the free flaps. So when you're doing decision making in the OPD, you would, excuse me for a moment. So I'm sorry. Decision making, I think most important is to talk to the patient if you're deciding on which procedure to do. And I already spoke about why you should be talking to them. You should learn their expectations, their profession, and their need for surgery. There are so many people I would refuse a surgery when you wanted to do, offer a patient a surgery. You thought that you're going to operate the patient. Patient comes fully prepared to your center that he wants to get operated, and when you talk to them, you realize that this patient probably would do best. He's probably had a change in refraction, or he's had a change in. There are times when a patient will walk in when he turns 18 with his father that I had my birthday recently and I would like to get operated. I would typically tell them, unless you're doing a merchant navy or something which necessitates you to do a procedure right now, I would ask you to wait, because you may have changes in refraction, you may have changes in your topography, you may have a cornea which may be going into a suspect cornea. I typically try to postpone them till the age of 21 and keep seeing them every year. So that's again a responsibility. And now looking at contraindications, now there are times when you will start looking at patients, and while it might appear to you that these patients are really good for a procedure, but I would be reluctant. First, obviously all of us would first look at the topography of the patient. Scheimpflug is probably the way to kind of get the maximum information, which includes the pachymetry maps, the surface maps, and the elevation maps, and then of course the Bellin-Ambrosio displays if you have a pentacam or other maps on the other machines. But I think going for, first of all, if I had to do a LASIK or a Smile today, I would not do it below 490. So whether be it a femto LASIK or I have gone in the past to 480 and 475. Today I would definitely not want to go on any procedure below 490 if I have to make a flap or a Smile procedure. So my cutoff for Smile and LASIK and femto LASIK remains the same. There are no decision criteria which are different for LASIK and Smile. I don't allow a thinner bed on Smile as I would for LASIK. The criteria would be exactly the same. If I had less than 490, I would start thinking of the surface of an ICL procedure. Now, how thin can you go on the surface? I would not go operate on a cornea which was perfectly healthy in every other way below a 450 or a 460, and that too if I was only doing a smaller ablation. If I have to do a deeper ablation, I would probably avoid doing that. And anything below 470, if everything else looks good for a phakic lens, I would do that. So again, maximum ablation depths are another consideration when you would like to do whether a LASIK or a Smile or a surface. So on a PRK, as I said, my maximum of 100 microns. Now LASIK, I typically would cut off at 120 microns, which means that even if I have a 600 cornea and I have to do a -14, I will not want to do it, because an ablation of more than 120 to 125 microns can be a situation where you are causing more weakening and the PTA would be disturbed for sure. And similarly on SMILE, you end up, because you have the protection of a cap, so you may end up going for a little thicker lenticule removals as compared to what you might do with LASIK, but the residual bed will not change. So I might do a 120 or a 130 or a 135 microns, sometimes even a 140 microns lenticule, but I will not allow a residual bed to go down. So PTA criteria has to be same for both LASIK and SMILE. So this becomes a big limitation when you're thinking about LASIK or SMILE, and when you would like to switch to a ICL or a PRK, and you would avoid a femto LASIK or a SMILE. So again, flat and very steep corneas, I would avoid microkeratome flaps, but they are very good for femto flaps. And I still do the eye trace and the epithelium mapping, and these help me decide between these different procedures. Today, because we do a lot of transepithelial PRK, it's become very important to do epithelium mapping. And with the eye trace, of course, or a similar abrometer that you might have, it again helps, because if you have significant corneal aberrations which you can correct, you might want to switch to a Contura or a different other procedure which might help improve the corneal aberrations as well. So again, now, when will you not make a femto flap and or a SMILE? Definitely when you have a suspect cornea, even if it meets all the other requirements. Here, I would probably want to switch to the surface, or if I wanted, I would switch to a SMILE extra. Sometimes a SMILE extra would be possible in these patients if they meet all the other criteria, but otherwise I would avoid. My threshold for switching to surface or ICL is very low today. I routinely do ICLs or phakic lenses of 2 or 3 diopters as well. If I notice a suspect cornea, I will not hesitate to switch a patient. Now, the reason why this may be happening is because when a patient comes prepared to pay for a SMILE or a femto LASIK, he's already spending a lakh of rupees. So switching them to an ICL will not really, hit their budget very much. So it becomes much easier to take that choice today. In the past, when we were doing, LASIK at 35 to 40,000 or 50,000 rupees, switching a patient to an ICL at 1,25,000 or 1,50,000 was a bigger jump. So it would be very difficult for them to do that. Now, again, inferior steepening like this, thinner corneas. Now, these are the prime examples where you would not want to do any form of LASIK or SMILE, because these are the patients where you will want to avoid any kind of flap-based procedure or a weakening procedure if you can. Now, age of the patient is another criterion which is very, very important. And I usually typically below 21 years of age, if I have to do a treatment, I will avoid doing a flap or a SMILE-based procedure if possible. So more importantly, a flap, but also SMILE. I would probably try to veer towards the surface. That doesn't mean that I don't do LASIK and SMILE for below 21s. I still do them, but if possible, I would try to postpone it, or I'll tell them to, go on for a couple of years on follow-up and see if they have stable topography and stable corrections. Now, over 21, of course, again, if there's any yellow or red flags on the Billion Ambrosio displays or on my epithelium mapping, I don't have a Corvus, but I think that adds to the number of red flags or yellow flags. You would again want to switch to a procedure which does not weaken the cornea, which means you may not want to make a flap. And if maybe you do a SMILE, you do a SMILE extra. And I think, over 25 things become much better and you are much easier. So I think my time is running out, but I'll quickly come to some slides which I wanted to share, the last few slides. For extra procedures, surface is the best. And SMILE extra, yes, possible sometimes. It works quite well in my practice. But LASIK extra, I don't see has much role at all. So if you've made a flap, a femto flap, or whatever you would like, it still doesn't, work out. When to avoid femto LASIK? Whenever SMILE PRK is possible, I would, avoid a femto LASIK. Corneal opacities and scars, suspect corneas. Medical aspirants, because it leaves the side cut can leave because of the energy, it can leave a mark which is more visible than what you might see even with a microkeratome, and they can get rejected if they are not allowed to have undergone LASIK. So I would probably choose to a surface procedure there. Again, if you're planning enhancements, if there's already a flap in place or something, avoid a femto LASIK flap. Peripheral corneal vascularization, if you're making a bigger flap, sometimes these bleed a lot and from the edges and they will not heal. I would probably want to switch to SMILE or a surface procedure which does not go to the periphery. And again, very tight sockets, because sometimes you can have suction losses, you can have complications with femto flaps, and even in the VisuMax, sometimes you can have suction loss. And patients who are very apprehensive or uncooperative and squeezy patients, so you can have these risk of vertical breakthroughs and suction breaks and incomplete flaps. I'm sure there is a talk which is covering femto complications. And these can be the reasons why you would want to avoid femto flaps in such patients. One of my patients where, which was peculiar, because as I did the surgery, I saw these funny small marks appear in the flap. I didn't know what was happening until we realized that there was a problem with the machine, because suddenly the calibration had gone off. I had set a 120 flap and the machine cut a 70 micron flap, and there were bubbles all through the cornea, which looked really funny like this. And I had to abort the procedure and, move to the surface. So you have to be calibrating your machines and, making sure that they are not there. Last slide, when not to smile. High astigmatisms, I would still probably, go on to a femto LASIK or a Contura LASIK if I had to. Significant active cyclotorsions, suspect and thin corneas. Again, I would not want to do smile, or maybe I'll do a smile extra. Now, patients who cannot fixate, because then they will not be able to center on the green fixation light. And on the right, you can see this patient who's having this, loose conjunctiva. So if there is a wet conjunctiva or a loose conjunctiva, it can start creeping into the suction of the Visumax. And these are the situations where you might want to avoid it. Again, very apprehensive squeezes, and sometimes very small myopic corrections, like, if you want to do below 1.5 diopters, because the lenticule becomes very, very thin, and then, you have a risk of the lenticule fragments being left behind. So I like to, operate smile only beyond 1.5 diopters at least. So I think we already know why when we prefer these procedures. I'll come to the last slide now. So to summarize, I think what's most important from Neeraj's course is, let's not have a fixed mindset of that, smile is the best. I do 100% smile, or I do 100% surface, or I do 100% LASIK. Every procedure is good. They have their own limitations and their indications. Understanding each patient's need is very critical, and as a surgeon, we have that responsibility. And all modalities have a place in a refractive surgeon's armamentarium. And smile is gaining on LASIK in a big way, but PRK is still holding on. And with that, I'll stop here. I was sorry for going beyond.